Morning, everybody, and thanks very much for the opportunity to be with you here this morning. Good to meet and get around and chat with you, many of you at dinner last night, and can I just say, one of the best conference dinners that I've ever been to. Forget the speaker, forget the formalities, let's just get together and have a good time. So Peter, well done, and well done to Maria and the team. I guess this is a really interesting opportunity for us to come together at a time, as our former speaker so eloquently articulated. How do we begin to reignite this sense of social capital? And what I'm particularly interested in speaking with you today about is how do we do that and engaging a new generation of citizens and ensuring that that social capital renaissance that Andrea Lee spoke about is being sort of cultivated at that new generational level. How do we inspire and engage our young people to be active contributors to our communities? I am a millennial, and so let's do a quick scout around the room. Can I just check? Millennials in the room, put your hands up, millennials. Nice to see you, nice to have you here, thank you. Generation X's, I'm sorry, always sad, the otherwise known as the forgotten generation, but it's nice to have you all here. And baby boomers, many baby boomers in the room today. I hope that by the end of this we're still friends, but it is also nice to have you here. Known as Generation Me, the lazy, entitled, narcissistic generation who still live with our parents. We're the Generation Y because we absolutely nailed the ability to wear our pants hanging so far down our asses that it created a Y from our ass cracks. We invented the quarter life crisis. I had mine when I was around about 23, went out and bought a bright green sports ute, and my dad was devastated and disappointed. And of course, we're the generation that's going to inherit some economic challenges. If I had $1 for every time a baby boomer complained about my generation, I'd have enough money to buy a house in the market that they've ruined. Thank you very much for that, baby boomers. Bernard Salt, we know, he said, all we need to do, you millennials, stop whinging. All you need to do is just stop having so much smashed avo on toast, you'll be able to buy a house. Maybe, but I'm not necessarily convinced that it's going to be able to be achieved in my lifetime. You want to know why we're cynical? Yeah. There's some challenges that we face as a community. And of course, I love this one. It's still today, millennials, the most unreliable generation in the workforce. Isn't it devastating? But I guess it could be worse, right? It could be worse. But let's cut to the chase. The children now, they love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for elders and love chatter in place of exercise, said Socrates in 469 BC. And this is not new stuff. Why should old men be preferred to their juniors now that it's possible for the young, by diligent study, to acquire the same knowledge? We've had these conversations about generational changes and about whether or not the young people today are going to be active contributors to the society to come for millennia. And so here we are today as millennials having those same conversations. But I really want to move... I know we've had some technical issues. Good. I really want to move beyond that conversation today because I guess what I would say to you is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what generation you're from. It doesn't matter whether or not you're somebody who's spent a lifetime contributing to your community or whether or not you're somebody who's just getting started on your community story. And the reason that it doesn't matter is because the challenges that we face today, you've just heard some of them from our former speaker, things like climate change, automation, restructuring of our economies. The challenges that we face are so significant that why would we spend time kind of having these conversations between us about who's going to get on and get the job done? Let's just find a way to be able to tap into our collective skill and apply those collective skills to be able to make our communities stronger. And for me, that comes down to some very basic and simple and pragmatic ways of approaching things. So Winston Churchill once said, to each there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing. Stop there. How many of you in your community life, in your community journey, are doing it because someone came to you and said, hey, look, I've got something that I think that you could do. I've got something that I think that you could achieve. Put your hand up if that's you. For most of us, getting involved in community, getting involved in contributing has happened as a result of someone coming and saying to us, hey, I think you can do that. And so one of the first most pragmatic steps that we need to take is be tapping people on the shoulder. Go out and find people around you that you can tap on the shoulder and ask to contribute. But when figuratively tapped on the shoulder and have had the chance to do a very special thing, unique to them and fitted to their talents, what a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour. I'm not really sure that I agree entirely with the premise of Sir Winston Churchill here, and if he was around, I'd tell him, as a good millennial, I'm going to change his quote. What a tragedy if that moment finds us unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour. And I think I'm a little bit of a case study for that notion, and I'd like to speak to you a little bit about that. This is the community that I live in and that I have the great privilege of leading. It's an amazing place, and if you have, put your hand up if you've been to Mandurah before. If you haven't been there, next time that you're in the West, make sure you come down and visit us. We have a resident in the room, Peter Kenyon. This is the beach just up the road from his house, his holiday home in Falcon. It's a community that's built around its waterways, beautiful coastline, and the traditional Aboriginal name for Mandurah is Mandurah, the meeting place of the heart. It's one of only 2 meeting places in all of the Noongar country in Western Australia, and it was throughout history a time where people came together and celebrated community, traded together, danced together, had cultural experiences together. And then as the community grew after colonisation, it continued to be a rich community, and now a place of 90,000 people, still with the absolute heart of a village. And so when I was 9 years old, and having been through a family breakdown and living with my dad and my little brother, Dad made the decision that we would move to Mandurah. And the reason that he made the decision that we would move there is because, having previously lived in an outer suburb of Perth with very little social capital, Dad recognised that for us in this new world that we lived in with a single parent environment, that growing up in a community where there was a village where we could learn about community was really important. And so began our journey living in this amazing place. Going through some public schools in the area, and at around about 13 got involved in a project called the Youth on Health Festival. It was a community project, and for me, who weren't necessarily the smartest kid in the class, definitely not going to fulfil my grandfather's ambitions of me becoming a famous tennis player. I was one of those kids that was looking for something that I could looking to find that thing that would help to give me that sense of belonging and that sense of connection. I wouldn't have used those words at the time, but that's certainly what it was all about. So I got involved in this project called YoFest. Absolutely no interest in the arts at all, can't dance to save my life, but the idea of the project was to help teenagers in high schools articulate their messages to community about health. And the great thing about this project is it was entirely put together by young people, all coordinated by teams of young people. And so having been in this project for a few years, when I got to about 17, I was halfway through my year 12 studies, doing pretty well, and the project was looking to fold up. And so I went to my dad and said, Dad, I think I want to start a not-for-profit organisation, leave school and get on and run this project. And he said to me, you idiot. And so did all my teachers and all the other people. But when I was firm on the decision that I was leaving school and I was going to start this not-for-profit, all of a sudden, my family, my mentors wrapped around me and my group of friends that we had got together to create this organisation and gave us this absolute amazing support and guided us through. And I remember going to the major sponsor of the project and saying, what do I have to do to get the next round of funding? And he said, could you bring us a cash flow statement? And I said, what's a cash flow statement? To our major funding partner. I wouldn't advise that if you're a not-for-profit in the room. Don't do that generally. Make sure you go to them having half a clue. But he taught me what a cash flow statement was. And here we are as a group of 17 and 18-year-olds sitting in this room asking for $500,000 worth of sponsorship, and we don't know what a cash flow statement is. But someone in the room was prepared to help us and teach us and guide us, and that it was okay that we didn't have all the answers. Following shortly on from starting this not-for-profit organisation, we recognised that the model of getting young people together and allowing young people to lead was actually pretty special, but wasn't really being done in very many parts of the community that we lived in. So we set up the Youth on Leadership program, and this was really about getting together groups of teenagers and taking them on a leadership journey that allowed them to use their skills and use their unique qualities to be contributors to community. And so we go away on a 5-day leadership development camp. That's what we call it, to be able to get them there. But actually what it is it's a whole lot of sort of personal and professional development, a whole lot of personal growth stuff that gives us the chance to learn about what our strengths are, because most of the time, by the time we get to 15, no one's really ever asked us, what are you good at? We spend a lot of time talking about what you're not good at and what we need to learn, but what are you good at? And so this program, this sort of 5-day leadership camp, was about finding out what you're good at. And then at the end of the camp, we give the group $5,000 and say, run whatever community project you like, as long as it's contributing to a community need and it's something that you can actively make a difference. Here's your $5,000, go off and do it. And it was amazing, because when we put them in the driver's seat, when we said to them, you're in charge, actually all of a sudden it changed the dynamic. These guys went from being people who, would feel like they had a disconnection from society, all of a sudden wanting to contribute, wanting to be part of it all, because we said to them, you can do it, you do it, here's some early skills and a little bit of assistance, some cash, you go off, we're not going to tell you how to do it, we're not going to plan it, we're not going to organise it, you have to do all of that, we're here if you need us, tell us what you need. At around about the age of 21, with a shocking haircut, I've got to say, I was involved in running this not-for-profit organisation, and don't ever do this. In many local government people in the room, as a mayor, I can tell you this is so far outside the realm of acceptable behaviour from local government officers. One of the City of Mandurah officers came to me and said, "Our council are a nightmare. And I think you should stand for council so that you can get on there and put youth on the agenda." Turns out he was the coordinator of the youth development team, looking for a little more cash in his budget, but that was okay. I put my hand up, having never been to a council meeting before, and crazily got elected. And on the night that I got elected, I remember the former councillor who I beat in the election came over to me and said, "Don't worry, I've checked, there's a kids menu." And that really, for me, was a really good insight of what it was like being a 21-year-old that was part of a council that were sort of much, much more senior than me. But you know what? After 4 years of being together as a group of elected representatives, I learnt so much from them. I think they may have learnt a little bit from what it was like to have a younger person involved in decision-making. And we grew, and the diversity that we had shaped in this place actually gave us the capacity to make better decisions. We set up as a group of young leaders in the community this space because we'd recognise that if you can get teenagers together and sort of build social capital amongst teenagers and have them being active contributors to the community, how do you do that with a group of 25 to 35-year-olds? Actually, the reason that we did it was we were all getting older and we were all looking for something that we could continue to belong to. So we set up this project called Make Place, which was really about getting young innovators together, young entrepreneurs together in a centralised hub in the middle of town, doing a bit of this again, capacity building, bringing people in and giving talks and having these things called Morning Glory, which was every first Monday of the month. We get together, we invite a speaker in, have a muffin and a coffee, and hear from a speaker who's done something amazing, and then talk about how we could learn from what they're doing and how we could contribute that to our community. Now, 150 members from across the community that we live in, all kind of in that 25 to 35-year-old age bracket. They run it themselves, they've got some good funding partners, but it's a project that's being run because we are looking for, as people, ways to be able to connect with like-minded people, ways to be able to get together and to be able to make something happen in our community. And then, as Peter said, 2 times I had a crack at being mayor, and I did that because I recognised that local government can be a great sort of place to drive change. And in October 2017, was elected as the mayor of my city, and that's a great privilege. But today I wanted to talk to you, I guess, about that early notion that Churchill sort of posed and that I sort of amended, saying, how do we get ready? Because in that progression that I've had, in those opportunities that I've had, what I can tell you at every step of the way, I've never ever felt like I was going to fail. And the reason that I never felt like I was going to fail, the reason I felt like I was never going to fall flat on my face, the reason that I never had that moment of, I don't think I can do this, and when I did have that moment, I was able to overcome it, was because the people that were around me were there to support me and say, you know what, you can do this. You know what help can we give you? What support can we give you? What assistance can we give you? I wasn't the only one. We've got a whole lot of us in the community that have benefited from being in a place that fosters the leadership of young people and enables them to kind of lead and get involved. But they were ready. The community were ready for us. And as a result, we were ready. At no time in the journey that I've had so far have I ever walked into something and thought, I'm ready to go. I remember getting elected on the night of October 2017 and thinking, shit, what have I done? I'm now the mayor of a city. How am I going to do that? I'm not ready to do that. At no stage was I ready. But because people around us were ready to foster that sense of young leadership, it hasn't gone so bad so far. So are we ready is the question that we have to ask. This is my fiancée, and she's a freak when it comes to sports. She's represented Western Australia in soccer, in rugby, in surfing. She's now turned her kind of passion to AFL, and having done that for 1.5 seasons, she's the best and fairest in her team for this year. She can do any sport that she puts her mind to. And so, interestingly, watching her take her new career into AFL, one of the observations that I would make is we were so keen to have women play footy. And it's so good. It's so great to see women's AFL teams propping up all over the country. And isn't it fantastic that it's really starting to get this massive momentum and this massive traction? But every time we go to an oval where Skipper's playing footy, there's no goalposts for the women's team because the men are playing on the major ovals and the women have got to play off to the park on the side. There's no scoreboards because, again, the major ovals are being taken. There's no change rooms because we've never really had to think about having women and men playing footy at the same time. And so we were so busy working out whether or not girls are ready to play footy that we never stopped and asked ourselves, are we ready as the AFL or as our local governments or as our local sporting clubs, are we ready to be able to make the most of these opportunities when these women start playing footy? For me, it's a really classic example of, are we ready? Are we ready to go? And so when you're preparing, when you're thinking in your communities, how can we be ready? I've got kind of 3 things that I think you might want to mull over and consider in making sure that you're ready to make the most of the young people that you've got in your community and to foster their talents and to have them be active contributors. The first one is make it matter. There's nothing worse than getting together a group of young, talented people and then saying to them, right, your job is to clean the coffee cups over here and you guys are the ushers. Can you please, guide the volunteers over to there? We see it all the time. They're new in their kind of leadership journey. So with these young people, we'll just give them some basic tasks to do. Make it matter. The thing that made the Youth on Health Festival such a successful project, this is the arts festival I was talking about before, is because it wasn't a case of we're going to send these kids on a leadership camp and then at the end of it we're going to, make them wash the cups of coffee. It was these young people driving this project themselves. It was these young people saying, we're passionate about making sure that our young leaders and our young people have got access to learning about their health, so we're going to put this project on ourselves. Make it matter. Make it tangible, make it real. Don't prescribe what your young contributors in your community are going to do. Just make sure that you're fostering that talent and you're fostering that ecosystem and pulling people together. And then when you are engaging with them, you're making it matter. I was speaking with the CEO of Regional Leadership Australia last night, Kat, and we were talking about how do you apply this idea of not only fostering the skills that you need as a leader, but then to give people active opportunities to be able to contribute and use those skills. And if you're not aware of what they're doing, make sure you have a look because it's a key example of a way that you can apply good leadership development with tangible, actionable kind of opportunities for people. That has to be the future of our leadership development. It's not about a course. The next is mentors. We've all had mentors. Put your hand up if you've had a mentor or if you've got a mentor in your life that's taught you something special. If you don't, you've got to have your hand up. We're not going to be able to grow and develop ourselves if we don't surround ourselves around people who give us the best chance to be the best versions of ourselves. But as people who have had access to mentors, we need to be mentors too. And of course, being a mentor isn't about sort of imparting all of your life wisdom onto someone and saying, I've got all of these skills and talents and now I'm going to pass them over to you so you can be just like me. It's about finding people who we resonate with and who we naturally connect with and then trying to create opportunities for those people, trying to find ways of being able to help that person to be the very best version of themselves. This is a mentor of mine, Paddy Creevy. She was the former mayor of Mandurah. And if she hadn't have said to me when I was about 22 years old, I think that you could be the mayor of this city and I want to help you, then there's no way that I would be. I remember a few years after this, Peter Kenyon, who's also a mentor of mine, says to me, we're going to go off and we're going to get a group of people together. We're going to head to the United Arab Emirates and we're going to shape a community and cultural strategy for people there who are disconnected from civic life. And I don't know how to do that, got no idea how to do that. But here's a mentor who says, I think you can do this. And so we go off and we do these things and we figure it out as we go. And so the role of the mentor is not necessarily to impart all of your wisdom, but it's to help people to be able to be that very best version of themselves. And I think when we talk about help, we need to be very clear about what we mean by that. Our purpose is not to help. Our purpose is to build a different kind of community for us all. It's about trying to find people who have great potential, great capacity, and giving them the opportunity not only to find their strengths, but also use those strengths to make a difference in some way that is meaningful, some way that is real. One of the absolute things that I've found, though, in working in youth development and working with young people, is you have to look outside a little bit of what you think is normal. One of the things that we do when we talk about youth development or youth leadership or engaging young people is we go out and we find the people who we think are the most talented, the smartest, the head boys and the head girls or whatever. But I'm really, really clear on this, that actually some of the most outstanding young leaders that I've worked with, people like these guys here who just do the most outstanding things. This is a group of young leaders who I just got back from running a camp with about 2 weeks ago, is that often it isn't the head boy or the head girl that you're going to be able to keep in your community as active contributors. They're going to go off and study at NASA, and isn't that wonderful? Because that's what we want. We want that level of aspiration. But finding people in the community who have something else to contribute, not necessarily always looking for the people that are the most obvious, but giving the opportunities to all people to be able to find their opportunity to lead. Not leading into the future, but leading today, right now. One of my absolute bugbears is when I hear community leaders say, it's great, we've got to create opportunities for our future leaders, our leaders of tomorrow. Well, could you imagine if I said, oh, it's great having all these seniors in our community, they're the people of the past. How insulting that would be. If we're talking about sort of putting a whole generation into a box and saying you can wait until the future, then we are absolutely missing out on a key opportunity to make the most of the skills and the talents that they've got now. So, to each, there comes a special time in their life when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder with the capacity to be able to contribute. Wouldn't it be a shame if we weren't ready to be able to make the most of those skills and those talents? Get ready. You have got a generation or two of young contributors in your community that are hungry to contribute. But if they're not doing it right now, the question that we have to ask ourselves is not what's wrong with them, but what's wrong with us, and what can we change to be able to make sure that we can harness the collective capacity of this generation. One of the difficult things about this is that there isn't a 5-step plan to doing this. Every single example is going to be different depending on your own context and your own communities that you're working with. And so rather than give you the 5-step plan to engaging with young people, what I just want to give you is some questions that I think you could ask, and maybe some questions that you might not want to ask. These are the questions that I most commonly hear. How can we fix this generation? Why can't I get young people to come to my events? I put on all this stuff and no one ever comes along. And we've got a Facebook page, but they're still not coming. Maybe they just don't care. These are the sorts of dialogues that we use in our communities when we're looking to engage with young people. Here are some questions that I think might be more valuable to ask. Not how do we fix the problem of young people, but how do we mobilise the skills of our young people to be able to drive change in our community? How do we use the skills and the attributes of a generation who are different to us and who have unique skills, and harness those skills to be able to solve the challenges that we have in our communities right now and not into the future? What assumptions have we made about what young people want in our community, and how do we test those assumptions? Especially councils, officers in the room, what we're really good at is making assumptions about what young people want. They want a skate park. They want a youth centre. Well, I can tell you, I've visited youth centres all over the country, and one of the things that they all have in common, most of them are empty. And the reason that they're empty is because we've made the assumption that they want it, but we haven't actually gone and tested those assumptions to find out what they mean by a youth centre. Would it sort of astound you to know that skaters don't like the traditional skate park? Because it's isolating. Usually what we do with skate parks is dump them over in the back corner right away from everyone. Actually, what we want is active community space in the middle of where other people recreate and come together. But we only know that because we test the assumptions. We go out and we talk to young people. And by the way, when we're talking to young people and we're testing our assumptions, just like if I was talking to a room full of you, I wouldn't come here and say, so, can you please tell me about what the best kind of surfaces are to put on golfing greens? And the reason that I wouldn't ask you all that is because I can't assume that you've all got expertise in that. What we tend to do with young people is we say, oh, you're young, you must know what skaters want. I've never rode a skateboard in my life. So if we're going to be testing our assumptions, we have to test our assumptions with the segments of the community that have the insight and the knowledge and the ability to be able to educate us. And the most important one of all, are we ready to be able to make the most of these unique skills and attributes that this generation have? Or as my friend Peter Kenyon often puts it, never do something for someone that they could do themselves, and always, always make every person you interact with feel special and important. That's it. If you want to work out how to harness the energy and the collective capacity of a generation, or in fact of any person in your community, no matter what their background is, make them feel special, make sure that they know their strengths and their worth and their value, and don't ever do anything for someone else that they can do themselves, because you're taking that power away from them. Instead, give them the option, give them the ability to be able to use their special skills, their superpower, to be able to make a difference in the place that you live. And that's all. Thanks very much for the opportunity to be with you this morning.
Any questions, Rhys?
Any questions? I'll come to you with the microphone if you've got a question, because then everyone else can hear kind of like what the question is.
Oh, thank you so much, Rhys. Really exciting to hear from you and another young person that's doing amazing things. We've brought 2 of our young councillors from our youth council here to learn about community development and then take it back to the youth council and to our community in Victoria. And so what you've had to say today is really inspiring, and we just want to help these young kids change our world in Wallen.
Very good. So standing up. And your names are?
Ebony.
Thomas.
Ebony and Thomas. A massive round of applause for them for being here today. What we need to do is get you guys off the youth council and get you onto the actual council and get you involved and making change in your community. Congratulations, and thank you not for being the leaders of tomorrow, but for leading right now. And good on you for coming along today and giving up your time. Are there any other questions that anyone would like to ask? Yes? Okay.
Thank you. Very inspiring. We have a lot of young people in our community, a lot of very affluent parents, and the community that David spoke about the other day about the council serving rather than actually the citizens being citizens and being more active. Since I've been a councillor in Hunters Hill, I've wanted to engage more with our youth, and we have a young girl on our library committee. But how do you start that conversation? Like you just said, don't do something for someone, let them do it for themselves. But how do we find those people? I know they're in our community. We have a skate park, and it's not, how do you start that conversation as the adult? Because it's patronising, and so it's almost scary to do, but I want to have that conversation. Where are they?
Thank you, and that's a great question. Where are they? Where are they? Well, the first thing that we have to realise in any type of good community engagement, I think, is you should go to them. I love hearing the stories about, people in communities when they're doing good engagement and good sort of, talent identification, if you like, is going to where those communities already exist. So obviously schools are a captive audience. You can go into schools and talk to people all the time, but doing it in a different way. So we've got $22 million to redevelop our waterfront project in Mandurah. And I was very keen to make sure that young people had a say in it. And so rather than go in and say, give us your 5 things that you want in this waterfront redevelopment, we had pre-primary kids and year 1s and 2s drawing what they want the waterfront to look like, and then we were collecting all of those up, using them to inform what we were going to do, and then we took all of those and we turned them into certificates, and we gave each one of them back to the participants and told them physically how they had contributed to making a difference to this place. So if it's about getting people involved in your decision making, go to where they are. But if it's about finding people who could be future leaders or leaders right now and tapping into the talents and the aspirations that they've got, then I think it's about, doing what we all want to do when we're looking for our leadership journey, and that is tap people on the shoulder. Go out and if you can't tap people on the shoulder because you don't know who they are or where they are, then ask other people to tap people on the shoulder. It's that simple. It's simply about, getting out there and creating environments where people can come to, like with the Make Place project, come in and sit around and have a beer and listen to a speaker and learn something. We all want to be attracted to like-minded people. So create those opportunities where you want those like-minded people to come together, or go to where they already are. And then when they're there, be tapping them on the shoulder. But don't do it straight away, and don't do it in a very governmenty sequential way, right? First we're going to do phase 1, which is this, then we're going to do phase 1, which is that. I love the story of the city of Karratha, where every single Saturday afternoon for 2 years, they had a barbecue in the park. And the reason they did that is because they wanted to work with the local Aboriginal community, and they knew that building trust was the most effective way to do that. So every single Saturday afternoon for 2 years in the park, they had a barbecue, and 2 people turned up to the first one and 10 people turned up to the one after that. And over time, they built a relationship where actually there was such a huge degree of trust that these Aboriginal people in this community wanted to contribute. It's the same premise. Build the trust, get out there and create opportunities for like-minded people to be able to come together. Any other questions? What? Yes, I'll come to you, sir.
Thanks, Rhys. Great to hear your energy as a elected representative of the community. One of the tensions that all systems have got is there's elected representatives, local government staff and citizens, and they all make assumptions about each other and think they can make stuff happen. In the role that you've played as the mayor, what have you learnt about making that all flow really well?
That's it's a good question, and it's a crucial question, and I think I can only answer the question through my lens, and that's about being really clear about aspiration. So leadership needs to be prepared to say, these are our non-negotiables. These are the things that we are absolutely going to do. One of the things that we did early on in our new council was we set 4 key, philosophies for our staff. One, the community will be involved and supported to build community and to be involved in decision making. 2, we're going to be the easiest local government in Australia to do business with. 3, that we were going to arrive at yes more often than no. And 4, that we are going to be one team with one culture and not be a whole different number of business units. So the council came up with those key philosophies, and then we said to our CEO, these are now your 4 top KPIs. So you work out how to measure them, you work out how to implement them. So we used the tools that we had available to us, which was as a decision-making body, very clear. Then I went around and spoke with every single staff group, every single unit within the organisation. I said, these are our 4 key expectations of you from a philosophical, from a cultural point of view. We've got to get to yes, you've got to involve the community and empower them. We're going to, and not sort of take their power away from them. We're going to be easy to do business with, and we're going to be easy to work with. And so that's been really important. Of course, the outward-facing version of that is then going out and inviting the community. So, that's going out to our businesses and saying, you tell us what you're going to do to help make your businesses stronger, and then you tell us how you need our help, rather than us going in and making assumptions about what they need. So I think it's twofold. One, it's about using your aspiration and the levers that you've got to set the scene, and then the other part is about how you invite the community to come and make the most of that. Can I just add one more piece to that? One of the things that people often say to me is, yes, but as local government officers, our council aren't interested, or our council are more into roads, rates and rubbish, or our council whatever. And so I understand the challenges of that, but I think the things that you need to remember about politicians are that they've got a massive, massive agenda with a lot of different competing interests. So you have to make what you're trying to do relevant to their world. Go out and start these sort of trial programs and getting people involved in, getting your citizens involved in your community, and then invite your members of parliament and your councillors to come and be part of that as well, because they are also citizens and will also be stimulated by that inherent value of connection that community creates. So make what you're trying to do part of their world, make it relevant to their world by first of all kicking it off and then bringing them to be part of that. Because everybody that's in an elected office, to some degree, usually to a very large degree, is doing it because they love their community and they want to see their community thrive. So tap into that sort of inner value that we all have for community building. I've probably taken up more than enough time, so thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Just ask one final question. You can imagine, as a citizen in this community, how excited I am. And Rhys is doing an amazing job in providing that kind of very visual, kind of like leader out there. I've just got one question I want to pop to Rhys before we do break for morning tea, and that is, tell us, how do you cope with being the mayor and then discovering you're not the mayor after 23 minutes? You're 24? Can you imagine that? And I just think it'll be lovely to hear that response.
Thank you for that. So the history of that story is mayors in WA are popular elected, or most of the mayors are popular elected, so elected by the community. So it's about 25,000 votes in this election that I stood in as a 24-year-old. And so I won by 2, as Peter said. 25 minutes later, after a recount, my opponent won by 2. There wasn't another recount. She was declared the winner. And, it's interesting. So I was disappointed, obviously, but I went in and then worked with some friends to create the Make Place project, and we did some other things. I went and worked overseas with Peter, and it was fantastic. But when I reflect in hindsight, I am so glad that I didn't win that election. And I'm not saying that because now I'm older and wiser, I've still got no idea what I'm doing. But what it taught me, I guess, was two things. One, the value of failing at something, and failing in a pretty public way, because failure is a great driver, and I didn't know that prior to that point. So obviously, when we're talking about creating opportunities for young people, it's not about wrapping them in cotton wool and making sure they don't fail. It's about making sure that if the wheels do fall off the wagon, that they've got the resilience to be able to kind of get through it. I was really lucky that I had other options and other things to do. But the second thing that I learned from that experience was that you should always come back to your why. And what was good about failing the first time and giving it a crack the second time is I had 4 years to make sure that I was doing it for the right reasons, that I wasn't doing it because I wanted it as a good line on my resume, but that I actually really valued the place that I live and I wanted to make a difference, which I do. So I think failure is a good thing. For me, it was really about that idea of clarifying my why and then going in and being able to do, I think, a better job of it as a result of failing from it the first time. Thank you.